Hi, this is Dovid Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah Anytime or wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts, it's always exciting to have you along for the adventure. Now, we have a sponsor this week who was the same sponsor as last week. I guess he had such fun. And he's anonymous. I know who he is. He knows who he is. I'm sure his closest family knows who he is, but I cannot reveal his identity because then his enemies will seek to destroy him. And so therefore, you never know when someone might suddenly target your loved ones. So therefore, he has to remain anonymous. And that's why I had to go someplace and they said, because of Corona, you have to wear a mask. I didn't realize that my Batman mask didn't qualify. I thought that would be very effective. They tell me, no, you have to wear like a Spider-Man hood. And anyway, so it's as chus for the donors, for him and his family and his loved ones. And Mitzvah Hashem, you know who you are. I know who you are. I love you. Thank you. Okay. We are in a series. Yeah, very exciting. Whenever you get into a series, the Atlanta Braves just won the American League pennant. So now the question is, after Major League Baseball boycotted Atlanta because of the All-Star game, because they passed a voting law that they don't like, and the question is, are they now going to boycott the World Series? I don't know, and I don't particularly care, you see, because they were worried that the voting law was racist, and so they moved it out of Atlanta, which has a majority black population, to Denver, which has an 80% white population. Because the times they are a-changing. Anyway, I don't know. I don't get it. Life is so complicated. But we're not doing a series like that. You know, we have a different series. And that is, we're talking about Tefila. We gave a little introduction in the last podcast, and we're going to be continuing it. So I got a lot to talk about. Because Tefila, as I mentioned last time, is a struggle. It's always been a struggle, but for our generation, it's more of a struggle. I'll give you an example. I read an article in the Hamodia many years ago that struck a chord with me. It was written by a young lady who had been in seminary. And in seminary, she got ready for a Shana Yom Kippur. They were learning lots of machshava svarim and musa shmuzin to be able to prepare them for davening. And now she goes back to America, and she has a job, and she doesn't have the time for that preparation. And she's going in on Rosh Hashanah, and she's nervous because she doesn't have her preparation. And she goes into the shul with her machzor, and she sees the alter babas, and they're davening, and they're crying with their tear-stained machzorim. And she says, they probably never did an Orged Al-Yoh. They probably never did a Pachad Yitzchak. They probably never did a Chaim Shmulevitz. But there's something inside. And it's true. We live in a generation where everything is hard for us because our hearts have turned to stone. That's the Navi talking, not me. When we say you should remove our heart of stone and give us a heart of flesh, that means because our hearts have become hard. And so everything's difficult for us. The Megillus Tainus was mevutal. They canceled it. Why? It says because this is what the Gemara says, that just like a needle in dead flesh doesn't cause any pain, so too, we don't feel anything. We don't feel happy. We don't feel sad. Don't feel anything. Chav Gimel Sivan, I will be married 40 years. Interestingly enough, my wife as well. I remember my bedekin. I hadn't seen my wife for a week. I'm walking down with my father and father-in-law on either side, my chaverim dancing in front of me. It was such a beautiful and poignant moment. You didn't need shtick. Today you need shtick. He does a little dance to chassan, he carries a rose, because the moment itself has lost the poignancy to it. Yeah. So something like Tefila, which is avodah shebelev, and our heart has turned hard as a rock. You understand the tremendous avodah that's necessary for us to reach into it. So I'm going to talk around a little bit. I'm going to give some background, set things up, try to put things into perspective before we get down to practicalities of what we can actually do. I'll tell you what you don't do. What you don't do is get one of those books with 3 pages of commentary on every word, because then you're not davening anymore, you're reading. And that has to be done beforehand. Let me give you an example, if you will. Davening is something of an art form. And if you want to be successful at any art form, you have to have practiced to the point that you don't realize what you're doing is complicated. In the Amateur Magician Handbook, Henry Hay had learned by T. Nelson Downs. T. Nelson Downs is one of the most famous magicians of the last century. He was known for basically developing the whole area of coin magic. That was his whole area. Anyway, so the kid, Henry Hay, says, I was practicing a trick, and the neighbor is watching. He says, you're good, kid, but you're not as fast as Teddy. T. Nelson Downs, Teddy. And he said to the neighbor, it's not that he's so fast, it's that he's so slow. And when he left, so T. Nelson Downs told him, let them think you're being fast. But you have to practice a move so many times that it becomes so smooth you don't realize it. The famous ballet dancer Baryshnikov, I remember seeing an interview with him back in the 1970s, and they asked him, who do you think is the greatest dancer of all time? And without hesitating, he said Fred Astaire. Says, man is genius because he makes it look so easy. But you have to practice and practice and practice. So if a person goes out for a dance and they're it has to be so smooth that nobody realizes what you're putting into it. When I was teaching in Discovery, so they have a certain set number of classes that they teach. And I remember there was one fellow there, and I sat in his class 5-6 times. It was exactly the same. He's been doing this for years. The same exact class. And I said to him, how do you give the same exact class with the same level of enthusiasm each time without getting bored? He says, because I've practiced it so much that I'm able to give the class and leave most of my brain free to watch the people's reactions and see how they feel about it. So, but you have to practice it. You have to get it down to the point where you're able to do that. When I was teaching in a particular yeshiva, it was a 2-year yeshiva. I suggested that we take 2 mesechtas that we know work and pick out 2 prakim from each one that we're going to do and just switch off every other year, because the kids only come for 2 years. And this will allow the Rebbeim to become extra proficient in these prakim so that we can teach it extra well. And everybody voted me down because they said, we'll go out of our minds. Go out of our minds. Rabbi Orlofsky said he once asked a Kriya Rebbe who had been teaching little kids how to read for 40 years. Aleph, Beis, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Ches, Tes. No, that's not what they do in this, Aleph, Beis, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Ches. Or if you want to be a little more dramatic, Yossi Lieber, I was at a kumsitz he was doing once. A bunch of teenagers. And at one point, he plays this very devekistic song. Abagada hava, zachata yakala, manasa patsa, karashasata. Abagada hava, zachata yakala, manasa patsa, karashasata. Ai begidi hivizi, chati yakili, minasi ipitsi, Kirishisiti yo bagodo zo chato yakolo monasa opotso korishosato baguda huvu. You get the idea. And nobody knew what he was doing. It was the aleph base to the different, the kudot. Yeah, and that's why it was an Ashkenaz audience, so you could also do or bagor dehova zochato yakola monuso opotso korishosoto. So Rabbi Orlofsky says that he asked this Kriya Rebbe, he says, 40 years you're doing Abagad Ahava, how do you not go out of your mind? And he said, because I'm teaching children, and little boys come in, and they don't know how to read, and they walk out, and I give them the gift of reading. Now they can read anything. I've opened up a whole world to them. What could be boring about that? It's very interesting. Because if you understand that, that's why there are people who say, davening, do the same tefillah 3 times a day, every single day. Okay, it changes on Shabbos and on holidays, but for the most part, it's the same tefillah over and over again. How am I supposed to come up with enthusiasm? Because it's the avodah shebelev. We have to get into our heart. Okay, so those are little tidbits that I'm throwing out there. What can you do with a tefillah? So tefillahs come in 3 flavors. That's what they call shevach, haida'ah, and bakosha. Shevach is praise. Praise the Lord. Yeah, praise. Haida'ah is to give thanks. Thank you, Hashem, for all that you do. Right? Okay. And bakosha is to ask. And I ask people, which of these are the easiest? And they say for sure, bakosha. Most people daven in the same exact way that a small child sits on a stout fellow's lap around a particular holiday dressed in red with a big beard, and they go down their list. I want a pony, and I want money, and I want a car, and peace for Israel. You throw that in; it sounds good. But I don't know if you know who I'm referring to. It's great here in Israel. I've never gotten used to it. And some of my kids, when they got married, they couldn't understand my objection because they didn't grow up in America. My oldest was 5 when I moved here. In Israel, they decorate the sukkahs with Xmas decorations that they have left over from the States. They put up garland, blinking lights, things like this. I can't. It doesn't. It has associations for me. My kids, once they moved out and made their own sukkah, they put in blinking lights, garlands, everything. So a friend of mine, Rabbi Orlofsky, he's been on the show. We hope to have him again. He told the story that he was once in Mattersdorf, Winsdorf, one of the 7 dwarfs, and he sees a sukkah, he sees this Hasidic kid, and he's hanging up, it's like little garland, and it has Santas on it. So he says to the kid, "Do you know who that is?" He says, "Some Rebbe, He wears a red one, he's got a big white beard, and his mamash taka looks like a Rebbe." So, hoi, hoi, hoi. But anyway, so they sit down and they go down the list. Gimme. That's what we define as davening. Thank you, we can manage as well. Someone gets a touchdown. They throw the ball to the ground, fall to their knees. Thank you, Lord. Lordy. Thank you for this wonderful bounty. Yeah. They have a holiday in America that's supposed to be dedicated to giving thanks. Yeah. We were grateful for the fact that we came to America, and the Native Americans helped us survive the very difficult winter. And then we celebrated our harvest. And then we gave the Native Americans 24 hours to get out of town because they were hurting the real estate values. But that's not true. Anyway, but it was actually much early in the year because Puritans who founded America were very tied to the Old Testament, what we call the Torah. We don't call it the Old Testament. They call it the Old Testament because they've got a sequel called the New Testament where God gets married and has a kid. It's a whole different story. But in ours, we don't have that part. We have the Bible Part 1. And Yale University, if you take a look at their emblem, it has Hebrew writing. And in fact, the founders were considering making Hebrew the official language of America. And so there was a strong sense of Old Testament Judaism in their observance. So what they called Thanksgiving was actually the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Booths, what we call Sukkot. Yeah. And they were celebrating the Chag HaAsif, the bringing in the harvest. It moved later in the year as time went on, and tend to eat a lot of Native American food, like turkey, potatoes. They didn't have potatoes in Europe. They didn't have turkeys, sweet potatoes. There's sweet potatoes and there's yams. One comes from Africa, one comes from South America. But cranberries, also native to North America. So a lot of these things was there to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So there are people okay with thanks. Praise, people have a harder time with Shevach. And I've heard people say it. What's the matter? God's got an ego problem? Needs me to tell him he's great? Okay, you're great, all right? Feeling better, big guy? Don't bring any floods or anything, all right? I'll catch you by mincha. I hope you're feeling better. And this concept of Shevach, people don't want to praise Hashem. So I want to start with Shevach because I think Shevach is the most important thing. If you understand that, I think that's the key to understanding all of the tefillas. I'm going to go back to when I was a kid. I grew up in New York. I was born in 1959. So in the early 60s, the Brooklyn Dodgers moved to Los Angeles. The New York Giants moved to San Francisco. We were left only with the Bronx Bombers, who were the Yankees. That was the only major baseball team in New York. In the 60s, at some point later on, the Mets started in Queens. And to this day, there's only one Major League Baseball team in New York. That's the Yankees. Now listen, full disclosure, I don't care. I really don't care. It's like somebody once described hockey as a bunch of French Canadians playing another bunch of French Canadians. Nobody really cares. Guy says I was at a fight and a hockey game broke out. But, it's not, nobody really cares. So I don't really care that much about baseball. But when I was a kid, everybody was a Yankee fan. Everybody in New York was a Yankee fan. That's all there was. Some of my brothers were Met fans. That's why I have to make fun of the Mets. I point out they call them the Miracle Mets because it's a miracle if they win. Nobody says that about the Yankees. You expect the Yankees to win. That's just how nature works. That's why everybody hates the Yankees. And they made a whole Broadway play turned into a film about how everybody hates the Yankees. And that's one of the things that New Yorkers love about the Yankees, that everybody hates them. And by extension, us. And we get a special thrill from that. But so I was a kid, and my parents took us to a Yankee game. Now you got to remember, the Yankees then were Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris, Joe Pepitone, Whitey Ford. Well, these were very, very famous people, Yankees, and kids would go, and we would make signs. New York loves Mickey Mantle, and you would carry it through the stands for everybody to see, because you wanted everyone to know you love Mickey Mantle. And kids would wait outside to try to see their stars, maybe get them to sign their autograph. Because how could you not love this man? He can hit a ball with a stick very far. And he can spit, and drink, and I don't know what else he did that was of note. But wow. Or you go to a basketball game and a guy can bounce a ball and throw it into a basket. Or you go to a football game and you have people the size of refrigerator freezers smashing into each other and knocking each other unconscious for about 12 seconds. And then they blow the whistle, and then they spend another 20 minutes putting everything back together, and then they smash into each other again. And people go crazy. Wow. I love you, man. You're the best. We love you, Mickey. There's nothing inherently wonderful about these people. Now, why are we praising these people? What's our motivation? It's because we're impressed by them. We're in awe of them. There are rock stars. I don't know who's around anymore. I lost track. I'm going to end up saying something embarrassing, so I'll go all the way back to make sure that I'm okay. Yeah. In the 60s, people listened to the Beatles. They were very popular. Surprisingly, not as popular as the Beach Boys. I didn't know this because we listened to the Beatles, but it was the Beach Boys, when I was growing up. I was a kid. But the Beatles were keenly aware of the fact that they weren't selling as much as the Beach Boys. That's why John Lennon wrote that song back in the USSR. Oh, the Moscow girls, dun 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 dun. He was making fun of the Beach Boys. Ad kedei kach, you think today. But these people were... So let's take Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney was knighted. He is Sir Paul McCartney, the Beatle. And there was a character by the name of Chris Farley, who was a comedian on Saturday Night Live. And he's interviewing Paul McCartney. And the whole interview is, oh my gosh, you're Paul McCartney. That's right. I'm talking to Paul McCartney. This guy's a Beatle. You're a Beatle. That's right. Oh my gosh, you're Paul McCartney. That was the whole interview. Just him saying this over and over again. Wow. That's about it. That's as far as it goes. There's not much you can say. So there was this woman in Scotland who wrote this very popular series of books. They started out being children's books, then became adult books. They had a big fight with the New York Times bestseller list, whether it was going to be listed as a children's book or an adult book, right? The Harry Potter series. And when one of the books came out, when she was still doing book signings, I guess it was book 4 or something, children were lining up with their parents in the middle of the night, waiting to go in and get their book signed by J.K. Rowling. They were waiting for it. Now, what are they going to say? I love your books. Thank you very much. Some kids say, I'm practicing the spells. Yeah, good luck with that. Nobody is going to really engage in a discussion. All I want to do is say, wow, you're my favorite author. I love you. Wow, you're terrific. Wow. And people they call it starstruck. People are amazed. Even when people say, I don't like the fans, I don't like that. Woody Allen would always say, I don't want people coming over and talking to me. they'd come over and talk to him anyway. Wow, I love your movies, especially the early ones, which were funny, he wasn't interested, but it did make a difference because people want to say how wonderful I think you are. I love your books. I love your music. Actors. I used to live in Los Angeles. Actors would sometimes dress up and go out and try to hide so nobody knew who they were because they get mobbed by people saying, wow, man, I love you, man. You're the best, man. Wow, man. So, if you live in New York, the odds are you never went to the Statue of Liberty. Because people who live in New York don't do tourist things. When relatives come from out of town and they're like, whoa, what are we going to go see in the big city? So you take them to the Empire State Building. You take them to the Statue of Liberty, take them ice skating in Rockefeller Center. Whatever New Yorkers, people who visit New York do for fun. But regular New Yorkers don't. So too in L.A., I never did any L.A. things. But my brother came out for the summer. So he wanted to see a game show. So he went to CBS, Television City, to watch The Price is Right. We're waiting online. And at the time, to give you an idea how old this thing is, there was a show called Hawaii Five-0 with Jack Lord. Now, they rebooted it later on, so it hurts the story. But the original one with Jack Lord. And Jack Lord is one of these really good-looking actors with a square jaw, and he's walking down. And he's walking past the line of people, and everyone are going, oh, Jack Lord, there's Jack Lord, oh, Jack Lord, And he's going, and I guess he heard me when I said to my brother, who's that? I wasn't a fan. Anyway, but everyone was amazed, Jack Lord. Now, what if it wasn't Jack Lord? What if it was the Lord? Creator of heaven and earth, master of everything, all-powerful, almighty, all-knowing. And you've got a little time. Shmooze with a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Wow, you're great. You're really unbelievable. Thank you. You're taller than the tallest mountains. Do you ever see like a relief globe of the earth? The tallest mountains really aren't that high. Oh, okay. The seas aren't that deep either. I guess that sounds a little silly. Those rings around Saturn, that was a great idea. Thank you. The Milky Way is my favorite galaxy, not that I get out that much. Thank you. I think gravity was a great idea because otherwise we'd like float away and stuff, I feel so stupid. Why am I amazed about some guy who can hit a ball with a bat, somebody who can sing, and play at the same time? Not all of them can, but many of them can. Somebody who can act. Jerry Seinfeld once said, I don't know why we give these people awards. Somebody writes words for them to say. The director says, stand here and say these words, and then we give him an award. The man's a genius. He said exactly what we told him to say, exactly the way we told him to say it. The man is, did you give that man an award? And somehow this bestows some sort of special status, but people are like, wow, Academy Awards, wow. These people won awards. And why are we amazed by these people? But a Kodesh Baruch Hu, who created the entire universe from nothing, knows everything, sees everything, is all-powerful, and we don't have a sense of wow? Yira is mistranslated in English. It's translated as fear of God. Yiras Hashem is awe. Wow. Not fear, wow. Right? So you prepare your Dvar Torah to give it the Shabbaton. Everyone knows how to prepare Dvar Torah. In this week's parsha, we have the dramatic story of Avraham and the Malachim. One could ask the question, if the Malachim that, then how come none of that? The Meshech Chochmah answers this with a mashal. There was a king. So too, each one of us in our own lives, good Shabbos. Right? Okay, that's how every Dvar Torah works. You have your little Dvar Torah written up, And there's, this is an old mushal, you have to forgive me, yeah? And there's a little noise at the back of the room, and suddenly, Rabbi Yoshev comes in and sits in the front row and looks up. And then Rav Scheinberg, and then Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, Rav Hutner, Rav Ruderman, the Brisker Rav, Rav Shach. They all line up and say, I'd love to hear your Dvar Torah. Hamana, 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 hamana. What are you afraid of? He's not going to hit you. No one's going to get up and slap you. I'm in awe of these people. I don't want to look stupid. And yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not impressive enough to you? That's Shevach. Shevach is wow. And I'll give you a little exercise to work on until next time. Work on being wowed and amazed. If you live in America now, or certain other countries with deciduous trees, the trees are changing colors. I always found that awe-inspiring. I grew up in Long Island. You go outside, and the leaves are red and crimson and orange and yellow and green and gold, and you're looking at it. It's just breathtaking. Here in Eretz Yisrael, we get these sunsets that are just gorgeous. Sometimes you get a view. When I was in South Africa, they said that in Cape Town, the Kiruv movement is less successful than in Johannesburg because the people feel like they already have spirituality. The entire city is built around this giant rectangular mountain called Tabletop Mountain. There's often a cloud on top of it. It's surrounded by the ocean. And you just look at it and it takes your breath away. Wow. Marabu ma'asecha. Practice being wowed. Practice looking at the Bria and saying, oh my gosh. That's what Shevach is. Wow. So that's our beginning of our series. We'll talk about Haidah next week, and then we'll talk about Bakosha. And then we'll talk about other aspects that I wanted to bring in. But I'm starting just by giving the foundation. So, you know that we have a new program. At the end of the podcast, we have questions. I have a whole list of questions here. I don't know how many I'll get to. But the first one I'm going to do is by Ari Rosner. Ari Rosner is the one who made the Rabbi Orlofsky mug. And he said now that we have a new logo, he's going to have to make a new mug. So, you know, what can I tell you? Life is filled with challenges. But anyway, I'm going to keep my mug in any event. And he writes, there's a lot of talk about what's wrong with our generation. What do you think our generation is doing right? As much as it pains me to say something nice, it is so incredibly important. And you're right, we don't talk about this enough. We talk about all of our shortcomings and all of our failings, and that's a mistake. It's a disservice. So let me tell you what I think the most amazing thing is. We've been beat and we've been down, but we keep on defending. We intend to stay around because we are never ending. The Chavetz Chaim once said, you know why all the Jews in Rodden keep Shabbos? Because all the Jews in Rodden keep Shabbos. And if they go someplace where they don't keep Shabbos, they won't keep Shabbos. Because they never sat down and made a choice. They never sat down and made a decision. Do you realize for a person today to be associated with Orthodox Judaism is such a tremendous thing? Because the forces out there are so dramatic to pull us away. So the fact that a person's willing to stand up and be counted as a Torah Jew in the eyes of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, you have no idea how valuable that is. When everybody was doing it, everybody was doing it. But to be able to do it because I've made a choice, and everybody makes a choice, because you all know there are plenty of people who are leaving the program and going off on their own. And the fact that people are still willing to stand up and be counted is the most amazing thing. And we have to celebrate that. Anyone who's still around today, and I always point out, you don't have to be the best. You just have to be there at the end. They used to have these things called dance marathons. And people would keep dancing and dancing until people would collapse. And the people who won were not necessarily the best dancers. They were the last people standing. Yeah. I remember when Afghanistan fell, there were people who compared it to the fall of Saigon. I remember I was alive at the fall of Saigon, but I didn't know that much about it. I just remember my mother had this expression. When you'd be at a kiddush and everybody was pushing and shoving, she'd say, "It looks like the last helicopter out of Saigon." This was one of her expressions. I wasn't sure exactly what she was referring to, but I found a first-hand account of the guy who was on the last helicopter out of Saigon. And he said, when we saw that Saigon was falling to the North Vietnamese, we said, anybody who can get to the embassy compound, we will get them out. And so people who could made their way to the compound, and the helicopters kept taking off to the aircraft carriers and the battleships out at sea. He says, we would load everybody up as much as we could, and we would take off. And as long as we could take off, we would let people load on, we'd go back, and we'd just keep doing it. He says, and I was of the last soldiers left. And we were dedicated. We were going to get everybody out of the embassy who was there. We couldn't get everybody out. But everybody who was in the compound, we got him out. And I was waiting for the last helicopter out of Saigon. And I thought to myself, the people who got rescued were not necessarily the most deserving, but they were the people who were there at the end. We're the people who are still here. And there have been many Jews throughout history who have not survived the test of time, and we're still here. We can look at a Kadosh Baruch Hu and say, we're here. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev once said, listen, the Jewish people may not be great, but who else you got? We're the best that you got, and it's no question about it. So, could we be better? Of course we could be better. Are there areas that we need to look at? Of course. I'm by nature of a social critic. That's part of my role that I get because I'm a public figure. And I always love it when I have these people say to me, I think you're speaking Lashon Hara about the Jewish people. I said, you mean like Yeshayahu and Yirmiyahu? No, you listen, look at what they write about the Jewish people. I tell the story that we had a men Shmiras Haloshen, and we were trying to get Rav Bullman Zatzal to come and speak, and he kept making excuses. So finally I said, Rebbe, why won't you come and speak? And he said, I feel that the public emphasis on Shmiras Haloshen is being used to stifle legitimate criticism of the Jewish community. Everyone's afraid it's Lashon Hara. So you have to point out the problems. But those are the problems for the good people. I was giving a drasha once in a shul, and I was talking about intermarriage and assimilation. And someone came up to me at the end and said, "What are you telling us? We're in an Orthodox shul on Shabbos." And I said, "'Cause who am I supposed to talk to? I haven't got anybody else to talk to. I'm going to talk to you." So the only people that we can work on is ourselves. We don't have anybody else left. So yeah, it's a tremendous celebration. Okay, I got time for one more. Kermit the Frog asks, what is your favorite food? Well, it's not frog legs, I can tell you that much. It's difficult being a Baal Taiva. There are a number of foods that I really enjoy. What's my go-to food? I really enjoy lasagna. American lasagna, or at least the way I make lasagna. Israelis don't really get it. They take like 12 lasagna noodles, they put a little bit of sauce in between, and you're basically just eating a big piece of pasta. But I make a filling with cottage cheese and grated cheese, and I, use tomato sauce, and I use, ranzoni lasagna noodles, and I stack it up, and it's really, really good. On the other hand, my mother's veal with peppers, which only works with American veal. I bring it back from America. You saute it, and then you fry up onions and green peppers and fresh mushrooms, and then you cut the cutlets into little pieces, and you put it in with some white wine, dry white wine, and you let it simmer a little bit, and then you add Hunt's tomato sauce, and you wait till it thickens. Give me a second. Anyway, so I'm fond of that as well. On the other hand, I make a vegetable soup, just vegetables, yeah, and I happen to think it's delicious. So what's a favorite food? It's really hard. It's hard to say. I have my mother used to make people's favorite foods on birthday. So for my brother Mitchell, she used to make this whitefish with vegetables, this baked whitefish that he really liked. For my brother Jason over Shalom, she used to make this chicken salad. She would make her own dressing, chicken salad and potato salad that would go along with it. For me, she made a rib roast. I'm a really simple guy, you understand? So a nice thick piece of rib roast. Can't really go wrong with that. So unfortunately, I don't have one favorite food. I have quite a variety of them that I enjoy. One last question. Do you watch the podcast? Absolutely. I really enjoy it. When I used to give shiurim, I would listen to my own tapes. And then after my CDs and my recordings, I'm always amazed. Because we have in halacha the concept, kozman shepolet eno boleya. When something is giving out, it doesn't absorb. So when I'm busy talking, I can't also be listening to what I'm saying. So afterwards, I listen to it. Sometimes I listen to old shiurim, and I set up all these questions, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what the answer is. And I listen to the answer, I'm like, wow, that was brilliant. So sometimes I try to always watch the podcast, and very often I laugh out loud because I really enjoy listening to myself. And I hope you do too. And that's it for this show. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can leave a comment. You can sponsor an episode. You can go to the question section and submit a question. You can go to the music section and get the theme song. You can write me at the contact button. There's lots of stuff you can do. And that's it for this episode. This is Dovid Orlofsky, and this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.